Grace and peace be multiplied to you and to the knowledge of God and Jesus Christ, our Savior. I want to welcome everyone to the General Baptist State Convention of North Carolina. My name is Reverend Young, and I have the opportunity to introduce to you our morning speaker, Ms. Teresa Sheets, who will lecture on servant leaders reaching, relating, responding as Christ. Teresa Sheets is a believer with a 25-year history of sharing her gifts of administration, education, and leadership development with the body of Christ. Still trying to admit people, so I'm sorry. In addition to serving as a leader in the community of faith, she is professionally a senior training and development consultant who has stood in front of and galvanized more than 15,000 executives, business leaders, professional staff, and volunteers. Within the body of Christ, her expertise in training and performance improvement translates to glorifying God by, by, by facilitating enriching leadership development conversations and sharing resources that equip believing individuals, teams, and organizations with the knowledge, tools, and resources to successfully accomplish the Ephesians 2:10 good works the Lord prepared for them to do. Let us give a great big welcome to Miss Teresa Sheets as she comes and presents in her own way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me make sure I'm unmuted. Good. Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. I really appreciate that wonderful welcome that Reverend Young provided, but I just want you to know what it boils down to is I am a believer and a child of God, and God has equipped me and given me knowledge sort of in the way of Joseph in his administration and Esther and her innovative way of responding to crisis. And so it is on my heart always that everything that I learn and understand in corporate business and training, that I bring that to the body of Christ, because I believe that we have I know, and you know, that we have a tremendous responsibility to be as effective and efficient in the Great Commission executing sort of way that God created us and called us to do. And so it's my pleasure to share with you today a few things that I hope will help us as a body of Christ to increase our reach, our influence, our effectiveness, and also some tools that you can begin to implement, some tools that are oriented to business, but I want to show you how to apply to the work that we do. So again, we can be most effective and most efficient. As a facilitator, my style is to be highly interactive and engaging. And so I welcome you to ask questions. Reverend Young is going to help me to monitor the chat and to monitor your reactions, and also to stop every once in a while and just maybe get an example of something that's going on in your area of leadership expertise, and talk about what these things look like in the church and the community of faith. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my presentation, and we will just walk through and get some knowledge and understanding that hopefully helps enrich us as servant leaders. And so again, we know that this is servant leadership, and the title of it is Servant Leaders Reaching, Responding, Relating and Responding as Christ. And Christ, although he gave us a great model of servant leadership, he was also about the business. He did say, occupy until I come again. And so that is where my heart is, and I just want to share with you today. You say leadership development in the church and in the community of faith? Absolutely. Not only did Jesus Christ model leadership development by developing the disciples, if you think about it, he taught and he trained them with specific instruction. He walked the walk. He role modeled for them and gave them to show them in real time what it is that he was teaching them. He opened up opportunities for them to do as he desired for them to do, to show what they now knew. by arranging opportunities, and he sent them out to do as he did. And he also debriefed them. He used the evidence of their performance to kind of instruct them for going forward. Think about when they couldn't cast the demon out of the boy, and they said, Master, why can't we do this? And he told them, you know, their faith was little, and he gave them instruction that would help to shift their minds and help to enrich their ability and capacity for ministry. So leadership development in the church is imperative. And I also want to share, just to kind of underscore how important leadership development is. You may or may not know this, but in a national survey conducted in the last 10 years, the last decade, but the statistics are still relevant. They haven't changed much. But a study found that of the pastors surveyed, 75% reported that they did not feel equipped to handle the business side of ministry, anything above and beyond spiritual matters. They did not feel well equipped at all to handle. But the church is full of business that extends above and beyond spiritual matters. And so pastors are some of the most recognized and seen members of the community of faith. So that is very important to note. But it is an attention getter for all of us, because we have all been created to manage a territory. The master expects us to steward well that territory and all the resources contained therein. And he also expects us to take care of the people that are part of that territory. So leadership development is biblical. It is essential, and it is effective when it is put into place. So we want to talk about how we do that in the church and in the community of faith. We're very, very good at our spiritual development. In fact, we are very good at self-directing ourselves in our spiritual development. We take it upon ourselves to engage in Bible study. We may do that individually. We do it in a group setting, in a corporate setting. We figure out opportunities and assembly opportunities to get biblical wisdom and understanding. We're really good at doing that. But imagine how much more fruitful our servant leadership would be if we were able to develop ourselves as leaders. Again, to give attention to those things above and beyond what is a spiritual matter. If you add leadership development to what we already do well, we'll be prepared to rise to the challenge in the way that some of the most well-run organizations in the world today are running. Now, I'm not saying so much as to run the church and the community of faith like a business, but I am advocating that we bring some very successfully proven business mindsets and principles and thoughts into the church so that we can run it a little bit better. I'm getting some feedback. Is there a question? Maybe someone needed to mute. All right. So going forward, we understand that Christ gave us the great model, really great model of servant leadership in that John 13 passage, that foot washing model of servant leadership that tells us or helps us to remember that servant leadership is characterized by the leader's positioning of himself or herself at the bottom of the power hierarchy, and by that person serving those very same people that he or she has put him or herself under. So Jesus gave us the perfect model, but do you also realize that he gave us a blueprint, which is a plan of action? So how to take that model and execute it, what shapes and structures that model, how should we carry it out? Well, it's presented, as you can see, in Matthew 10 and 16. Jesus said, "See, I'm sending you out like sheep in the midst of wolves." He told us already what to expect. We know what it looks like for us to operate in the world. But he also said, "So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves." And so he told us what to expect, but he also told us how we should manage that expectation. That word wise here is a Greek word. The Greek word is phronimos, and what it means is to be practically wise. It means to be rational. It means to be sensible and intellectual, intelligent, about the way that you go about doing things. And so that says to me, because we already have the models and the accounts of how Joseph administrated business and Nehemiah administrated business and Esther's way of taking care of business. So we have a model, we have a plan of action, but we understand that we also have the room to be creative according to our purpose and the territory that we were called to. And so we just want to talk about how we get down to business. So I'll pause here. Let me just stop sharing for just a moment and just check and see if we have any comments. Let me check chat. I know Reverend Young is helping me to monitor that.
I don't see any comments right now or any
Okay.
questions in the chat right now.
Okay. All right. So as we move forward, let me keep sharing. We're going to talk about the tools. Let's get back to the presentation. Okay. All right. So how exactly do we operate in the world, wise as serpents and innocent as doves? Again, I'd like you to be mindful of the way that Jesus operated, and let's bring that forth into today's world, but especially in today's world, given what's happened to the church and the community of faith in the midst of what has happened in the world the last couple of years with the onset of the pandemic. We need to understand what it means to operate as a servant leader, wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Let me not get too tongue tied today. So we understand that God cares about the details. If you think about the instructions that he gave to build the tabernacle, the instructions that he gave to build the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat, he does care about the details. There are a great many details in Leviticus and in Numbers about how we operate. And so we have to think critically about the details as well. And so what that means is that we need to think about how we plan and strategize. We need to think in detail about that. We need to think about how we develop and implement solutions, because as servant leaders, we should be listening to understand the needs that are present in our territory among the people that we were called to take care of. Those people have been entrusted to us as servant leaders. And so we want to think about our solution. And then we also want to make sure that our efforts are God glorifying, that we have taken care of business as the master would have us to. Think parable of the talents. We want to make sure that at the end, we have considered how the master would have us to conduct business and do just that. So our work can be considered good, and we can be considered good and faithful servants who have done the work well. And so that's how we do it. And so that's the mindset that characterizes our servant leadership. But we want to get down to business. And I just want to give you, again, some tools. And I will be sharing and unsharing so that we can talk. And hopefully you all will be able to consider some things that are going on in your territory, in your area of influence. And we can just talk through maybe how to apply some of these things today, so you can get a sense that the church and the community of faith are called to manage business. All right, so getting into the meat of today's presentation, because we don't have a lot of time, but you will walk away with a leadership resource packet, because we're servant leaders and we are called to every level of leadership and stewardship. And so this is for everybody. And as we're talking today, I want to just make sure that you understand that the things that I'm giving you can be applied whether your area of influence is a whole entire church. If you have an office or a committee or a ministry, even your household, that is a place where you are a servant leader. And so these things can be applied by all of us. And as we are doing so individually, collectively, I promise you that the community of faith and the church will start to look different when we take care of business in a new sort of way. And so I want to give you resources and knowledge and tools in 3 areas this morning. We're going to talk about position, perspective, and tools in the context of a servant leader. So beginning with servant leadership position. By position, I do not mean the area that you are located in, the area that you oversee, your area of management or oversight, or even the people that you are over. What I mean by position is your heart, the position of your heart. And so for the servant leader, the position of the heart should be as it's pictured here. Consider and shift your mind to kind of wrap around this. Our hearts, we need to think critically about, our hearts should be positioned as if on a silver platter. And what that means is, as servant leaders, we are giving our hearts away with no expectation of anything in return. All right. And that's the position of our heart. But that position is characterized by a few things. There are a few very primary characteristics, essential things that heart should be made up of as a servant leader. And we need to make sure that we develop ourselves and strengthen these things. And so, first and foremost, compassion. And we're compassionate. This is the work that we do. This is the place that we live in the community of faith. But I want you to think about compassion in the way that Jesus handled compassion. Using Mark 6:34 as an example, think about when Jesus was teaching and it was time for teaching and preaching to end, but he looked out among the crowd and his heart was broken because he realized that they were sheep without a shepherd. And so what he did is make time. He made space and time to meet the people's needs. So he continued to be present so that he could continue to teach and be there to meet their needs. And so compassion means more than having a heart. It means thinking about making space and time to meet people's needs. Another thing that is present in the servant leader's heart is humility. So we need to think about how we are displaying humility, how we are lowering ourselves in order to serve. And that, of course, is very evident in Matthew 23:11 and 12. That's a great example, but all throughout. But humility, how are we lowering ourselves to serve? What does that look like? And is that an area of development for us, an area that we need to enrich and strengthen? Service, giving away your life. That's a pretty easy one too. We know that servant leadership is shaped by that Matthew 20, 26 through 28 style that Jesus stated he was displaying when he said he came to serve and not to be served, as well as to give away his life for a ransom. And if that's what Jesus came to do, that's the very least that we are called to do as well. So we know service, humility, and compassion. We know that those make up the servant leader's heart, but we want to start to think about those critically and take a look at how we are displaying those, how we are demonstrating compassion, humility, and service. And then empathetic listening. A lot of people say active listening, empathetic listening in the way that Jesus did. In John 8:4 through 11, is that account about the adulterous woman. And I want you to think about that maybe a little differently if you haven't, how Jesus was present and patient and non-critical and kind to that woman. But think about the fact that he was also that way to the leaders who came to criticize her. He, in a very, very creative way, answered them without being derogatory or diminishing their point of view. And so empathetic listening, we want to think about how we are listening and what it has looked like and what it can look like for us to be empathetic listeners. And then finally, these three things, stewardship, vision, and empowerment, should characterize the servant leader's heart as well. So stewardship, we want to think about how are we showing up responsible and faithful to the things that have been entrusted to us. Vision, we're going to talk more about vision in just a moment, and I'm going to give you some tools for vision, even in this time when the church has been so affected by what is going on in the nation and in the world. But vision, not only your dream, but how are you sharing that and enabling your people to accomplish it, empowering them so that collectively you bring it forth. And then empowerment, I already said that it is connected to vision because you want want to authorize your team and release them to do the work. You want to trust them to go out and do what it is that they've been taught and trained to do, in the same way that Jesus did when he sent the disciples out. He gave them instruction. Think about that. He told them what to carry, how to go forth, but he also gave them solutions for their primary potential problem. In case they don't receive you, he said, what do? Shake the dust off your feet and leave that town as you're leaving that town. And it's a testimony and a record of what happened there. And so we want to make sure that as servant leaders, we are demonstrating all of this out of our heart. But again, we'll have some tools to reinforce ourselves so that we are able to conduct business. As the master says, we are going to really start to occupy until he comes, in that parable of talent sort of way that pleased the Lord. All right, so that's position. Now I want to talk about perspective, and maybe just shift your mind a little bit concerning perspective. I'm just guessing that if I say Luke 6:31, and somebody can feel free to unmute if you want to be the person who tells us what it says, but off the top of your head, I'm sure that everybody knows what Luke 6:31 says. I'm sharing right now, so I can't see any nodding heads or anybody coming off mute, but you probably know that's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is a Jesus Christ-like way of operating. It should characterize the servant leader's heart. And that's a pretty easy one to wrap your head around, right? Because who among us does not want the best for ourselves in every situation, at every moment of every day? And Jesus just said that mindset, do for others the same. And I agree. But I challenge you to take the spirit of Luke 6:31, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and add this perspective. This is called the platinum rule. If you've never heard of it, if you're not aware of it, do unto others as they would have you do unto them. That takes servant leadership to the next level. What do I mean, and what does that look like? Well, consider this. In the workplace, what if, when it comes to crunch time on my job, that time of year when it is just crazy, what if I really start rolling out the affirmations? Because I love affirmations. I love speaking things into existence, as we're called to do, right? That's how God operates. He creates things with the word. And so I love affirmations, and I love to speak the positive. And so what if I really pick that up at crunch time on my job? But what if I have a coworker who can't stand affirmations? She can't stand talking, period. She likes to keep her head down and get done what needs to be done. And my affirmation, shouting self, what if she starts to hate to see me coming? What does that do to our relationship? It impacts it, right? As a servant leader, even though she's a coworker, she's still in my territory. I'm made in the image of God. I was created to demonstrate power and authority given by God. And so even though she's equal to me in the workplace, I have a great deal of authority. I'm still called to serve her. She's one of the people that God has entrusted to me. She's in my territory. And so to serve her better, to serve our relationship better, maybe I scale back on the affirmations. I respect the fact that she is more productive when things are quiet. And maybe I let her take the lead on what gets said during crunch time, or how much we talk during crunch time, things like that. That's what it looks like to do unto others as they would have you do unto them. So going forward, in the workplace and actually all over life, you can think about tuning in so that you understand what are people's communication preferences. Because if you think about it, the way we do not all communicate the same, but we tend to communicate with people as it's comfortable for us. I come from, and a lot of us do, I come from a very loud family, and my husband does not. Very early in our marriage, he pointed out the fact that my family is so loud. I'm so loud he can't even hear me when I talk. It sounds crazy, but after not too long, I understood what he meant. His way of communicating is to always use your inside voice. Your outside voice is reserved for special situations, emergencies. And was always sounded like it was an emergency. And so, in order for us to have a richer, more communicative, more productive, and fruitful relationship based on our communication, I understood that's what he needed. And I learned to bring it down so that I could communicate in the way that he needed me to, more than the way that I like to, and that was comfortable for me because it served him better. That's the platinum rule. And so we want to make sure that we take a look at how we are doing unto others. And I challenge you to add the platinum rule to the golden rule, because it really does take things to the next level, and it affects very positively the relationships in your life. All right, so moving on. Now, what I'd like to do is give you a few tools. So, wherever you are as a servant leader, whatever your work is, a lot of these tools are very productive for the individual as well as the team and the whole organization. And so, as I'm presenting these to you, and you can see how you can apply them to your ministry or volunteer role or your actual job, I'll try and give you some examples, but please do feel free to ask questions, ask things in chat. Feel free to raise your hand so you can unmute. We will have a little bit of time to hear a question here and there before we get to the end. And Reverend Young is helping me to monitor that. So the first servant leadership tool, and we just reviewed this, but I do want you to look at your heart as part of your servant leader toolkit, because the way that you handle and present your heart can make all the difference in your servant leadership, as well as your influence, your relationships, and ultimately your productivity, right? And so remember that heart presented as if it's on a silver platter. You're doing what you do with no expectation for anything in return, and you're demonstrating all of the strong characteristics of a servant leader. So consider that part of your toolkit. And then also the platinum rule, which I know we just went over, but consider it a tool because it can help you to fix and mend relationships. It can renovate and improve situations when you start to take the time to understand what people need and deliver that. It makes all the difference. As kind as you might be, as thoughtful as you might be, as caring as you might be, you take things to the next level when you do not just what you do well, but you do what you do well for other people in the way that they need it done. So remember the platinum rule. That also is a part of your tool, your servant leader toolkit. But then you also need some leadership instruments, some actual things that you can use and apply, because we've got to take care of business. We cannot let our pastors, 75% of them, our ministers, other leaders, and people who are working and serving in the community of faith, none of us can feel like we're very comfortable with the spiritual side of things, but when it comes to business, I don't know what to do, and I'm not trying to figure it out. No more. All right. We need to operate exceptionally. We have so many biblical examples of creative and innovative and strategic planning and execution. And so we're really going to start to take note of those, but I want to show you how you can realistically and doably take note of those. So regarding leadership instruments, you need things that help you plan strategically, understand how to establish processes and establish some processes. And then also measure things. Very, very important things that we really, really need to do in the community of faith. And so let me give you just a few beginning things. So here is a SWOT analysis. You can see strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, if you search the internet and you put in SWOT analysis, you can get all sorts of things that are downloadable and editable, things that you can fill in, things that guide you. I personally like this template because it's just so straightforward. This allows you to brainstorm about a problem or an issue or something you're considering changing or establishing. And in each area, just make a list of what of what is relevant for that area. So a SWOT analysis, I have used a SWOT analysis for such a range of things. If you are a Christian education leader, you may use a SWOT analysis to determine what is effective and what is not effective and what needs to happen with your Christian education program. If you are considering establishing a new ministry, like when we brought youth leadership into our church, I did a minor SWOT analysis. You can do this to whatever degree that you want. It can be as comprehensive as you want. You can handle it lightly or go very in depth. But I did a SWOT analysis to kind of think about what are our strengths as a church, what are our weaknesses, what opportunities are there, and what would threaten a youth leadership development program if established. You can use it for processes. You can use it for problems, to examine problems, to help you nail down what's going on in your organization. This is a great planning tool and something that you can start to implement to help you figure out how to be more effective. All right, let me just stop for a moment and Reverend Young can help me and just see if anybody has any questions regarding a SWOT analysis and how you might apply it in church or in the community of faith, in whatever ministry or area of oversight belongs to you. No questions, no chats. Okay. All right, let's keep it moving. A lot of people are very familiar with the SWOT analysis. All right. So I just asked the question, if you had any questions about how you might apply it, if anybody has any ideas or any problems that you want to explore, we may have time for that as well. Okay, but there don't seem to be any questions. Another thing that I want to present to you, and I really love this because I love the opportunity to be able to creatively solve problems. And if the last more than a year, going into a couple of years, if it has taught us anything, it is that we have to be ready. We've said for so many years, be ready so you don't have to get ready. I think we understood with the onset of the pandemic how much opportunity that there is for, and how necessary it is for the church and the community of faith to examine the things that we are doing, understand what is the best of us, and build that up and strengthen it so that we are ready for such unexpected situations and circumstances that were brought on by the pandemic and caused by the pandemic. So the appreciative inquiry 4D cycle, this is another thing you can understand in more detail if you did a Google search. This is a very simple model. There is a 5D cycle, and the fifth D, if you happen upon it, it comes before this discovery section here, and and so it's really the first one, but it adds to make 5, and it's definition. So define your problem, and then this 4D cycle shows what you can do. You and your team think about what is the best thing about our church, this ministry, this committee. What's the best thing about our community? Appreciate what that is. All right. That's discovery, thinking about it and bringing it forth. And then dream about what it could be. If the best thing about your church right now is that your church has not ceased to meet. Maybe you have you had a lower membership, and you were able to figure out and understand at some point during the pandemic how to come together in the safest sort of way. And if maybe that's the best thing about you right now, because there are so many who are unable to meet. Imagine what that could be. How can you take it higher, further? How can you enrich that? And then design the system or the process or the program, the new program that supports the best of who you are right now, the best of what you determined exists about your church or ministry or committee and then you create it and implement it. The 4D cycle is just a very, very innovative sort of way, creative sort of way for you to envision as a servant leader, but also to share that vision. You can bring your team in on the strategic planning and the execution, but very, very creative and very necessary, especially in this time, because so many things have happened that have changed, transformed, and or changed us forever. And so it is time for a deeper dive to understand what we can do creatively to respond. I hear maybe someone's microphone is unmuted. Do we have a question or comment? No questions about appreciative inquiry? All right, I'll get back to sharing. All right, so this is a model. Again, follow it. It is a guide, but it also is loose enough for you to decide how you or your team, your church, your community program, how they bring this forth. All right, so I love this for strategic planning. No questions, I just asked. All right, the 6 boxes. This is one of my favorite tools because it has helped me help my teams to enhance their performance and enhance their effectiveness. And I'm really working on something concerning the Great Commission in the 6 boxes right now, because it's such a resourceful tool for helping you understand what needs to be done to get done what you were called to do. It's an empowerment tool, an empowerment and a performance improvement tool. It's called a behavior engineering model because when you follow it, you really can change what's happening in your workplace, in your ministry, church, in the environment. So what does it look like to use the 6 boxes? And you can use this as an individual or as a corporate team. What does it look like? You can see that there are 2 rows, one for the environment, one for the person. What it means to use the 6 boxes is to scan your environment so you can see what is present that you can use that will help you along, but also what's missing that is impacting the work that you do. So what is missing that you need to establish, that you need to bring in, that you need to make sure is present? So first, when you scan the environment, you want to make sure that you and people and all of the people who are connected and concerned, that they have the information that they need. Have you ever gone to do something and you didn't know what to do because you didn't have all the information you need? So data and feedback is part of that information. When people are saying this isn't working, or this is working for this reason, that's good information. Do people have the information they need? And that includes clear expectations and instructions, everything they need to do the job. Instrumentation, that means do people have the things they need to do the job? So do they have the technology? Do they need a laptop? Do they need landscaping tools for a beautification project? Do they have the support they need, the manpower along with the information? So instrumentation is part of what you need to scan your environment for to make sure that you can productively do the work that you need to do. And then finally, motivation. So in the environment, what's in it for me? So as servant leaders, we are very good at motivating and encouraging people, of course, biblically aligned. Sometimes people need to understand more. If the community is some of the stakeholders that you're engaging in a project and you're scanning your environment to see what the community needs, people who are unchurched or unsaved might have different incentives or motivations. They might need to understand what is the reward or what is the positive consequence for me being involved. So again, this helps you to scan your environment to understand, excuse me, to understand what you have that works great and supports your efforts, but also what you need in order to make sure that you're successful. All right. And then you should also scan the environment for the people that are involved. So the people that are pushing forth the work, who are handling the responsibilities, who are helping to carry out the vision. You want to make sure not only that the environment presents the information that is necessary. For instance, maybe people need a manual in order, an instruction manual in order to get something done. But when it comes down to the person, you want to make sure that they have the knowledge and the skill to handle that information. So, for instance, if you are in your church developing, well, I'll just use my church for an example, a youth leadership ministry. So developing youth in line with the First Timothy 4:12 that tells them, don't let people diminish you because you're young. We're developing a youth ministry. And so there was a leadership manual that was created for them. But then I had to look and understand what is their capacity for understanding. I have a range of youth here, a range of grades and ages. And so I had to make sure that they had the skill to process the information. So that's what that means in this case, the knowledge and the skill. And then the capacity. When you go to ask people to do things, you may provide them with the technology that they need, but then you have to understand, you have to make sure that they can handle the technology. So what it looks like to scan your environment to understand that the capacity is there. For instance, if your finance person gets a new accounting software, that's the tool that he or she needs to do accounting, but then you have to make sure they have the capacity. So they're an accountant, so they can utilize the software, but then maybe they have eyesight problems. And so in order to use the software, which they're quite capable of using, you have to do something different with their screen. Maybe you need to bring in a magnifier application, something to that effect. So you want to make sure capacity means that people are able to do what they are able to do because they have what they need in just the way that they need it. And then finally, for the personal motive, you want to just get to know people and understand that they are as excited and motivated about the work and responsibilities as you would like them to be. Make sure they feel confident about completing work and activities or responsibilities, confident about working on projects. And then you want to be honest about their motives and motivations and what they expect as outcomes. And so that's what it means to apply the 6 boxes. And you don't have to have the 6 boxes open. It's really, you can use this tool just as it's presented. And I will share this tool and a more detailed version of it in a leadership resource package that I've created for you. But really, it's also a mindset. I don't often have this open, but I do understand that it's necessary for me to kind of scan my environment to make sure that we all have everything we need to do everything that we are seeking to accomplish. So that's really the bottom line, what the 6 boxes is about. And then finally, something that the church and the community of faith should do probably better and more. By my experience, this is not something that we do very often, but we need to understand how important it is to measure things. Dr. Barr and I have been in conversations, and he has often said, and it's true, that we need to measure what we seek to master, because how else will you know how effective that you are being? How else will you know whether what you did was successful? How else will you know whether what you plan to do is even needed? We need to start to measure so that we can make things better. And so I just want to present a couple of ways to measure things so that you can take those back to your role in your area of oversight and start thinking about how you can make things more effective by gathering quantitative data as well as qualitative data. So let's just take a quick look. This is a Likert scale. We have all seen these in all sorts of situations, probably all our life. But I want to point this out to you because there are Likert scales that you could sketch this up for yourself. It's real easy to create this yourself on your computer for your team. There are editable ones that you're able to fill in, but this is a really, really great tool for you to rate things so you can understand how to prioritize, where to place things on your timeline, how people feel about a solution that's been developed or implemented. Is it even working? This is a great ratings tool. So you can see over here, you can incorporate the things that you're looking to measure and then distribute this list to the people who can provide you answers. And it's really pretty straightforward quantitatively. When you start adding things up in every category, then you can see how people feel, which will help you understand how to make decisions going forward. What happens here will inform your servant leader operations going forward. So it can't help but to make you more effective because you'll understand what is happening. Focus groups are another way to gather information. And when we think focus group, we think marketing and we think it's just a marketing tool, I think typically. And sometimes we might, not mind taking the time to give feedback on a product. But it's also a really great tool for us because focus groups can allow you to gather qualitative information, which tells a story. So whenever we're going to do something, why wouldn't we? Because the community of faith is a community. There are lots of people present, even if now not always physically present. We can call people and we can get people engaged via Zoom and in other ways. Why wouldn't we ask what people's opinions are on things so that we can understand if we're even hitting the mark? Very important when it goes to community work and programs that we have been running or seek to establish newly. We want to make sure that we are hitting our target. And the great thing about this is the information comes directly from the source. People love to tell you how they're feeling when you ask, and it helps them to understand that you are caring about what happens with them because you are asking. And the other great thing about focus groups, in addition to getting that narrative storytelling data that helps you understand what's happening with your church or ministry or at your job, the other thing that you can do is connect a Likert scale to this. So you can get people's opinions and get their long and short answers, but you can also create some questions so that following the conversation and their answer to your focus group questions, you can distribute a Likert scale that builds on this conversation and helps you also add ratings in various areas to the conversation that you had. So very good information. And again, the point for measuring is because we can't just be doing stuff. We can't do things that are not effective. And I know we've all heard that saying that says, if we keep doing what we do, if you keep doing what you, now I just had a brain freeze. If you keep doing what you've done, you're going to get what you've always got. Various ways to say that. And then sometimes we keep doing the same thing over and over again with the same results and nothing's changing, but we keep doing things hoping for a change. And we all know, we've heard that that's insanity. And so we need to start to master, because this Great Commission is no light task, but it is what we have all been called to do. There's a way for us to do it. There's business to be taken care of. And we have to understand that our efforts are fruitful and productive. And we have to understand why, when they are not fruitful and productive, why that is. And so measuring helps us to do that. So another final measurement tool to measure and make it better is a rubric. You've probably seen these. Maybe teachers have shared these concerning your school-age children, but we can use these for just about anything. So you can see, you can put criteria over here. For instance, what if in your faith organization, you've got staffing that needs to happen? You want to make sure organizational job descriptions are written and clear. That's your first criteria. Then what you would do here is write a performance descriptor for each level, for example. So here you would say, for instance, job descriptions are precisely written and very clear. That would be a 4. And then you would do a performance descriptor that was a little less. That would be a 3, then a 2, then a 1. You've seen this sort of thing, but I just want you to understand this is something that you can apply to your area of oversight to help you assess what's going on to make it better. Every description is organized with responsibilities and performance expectations. That's my example for what a level 4 would be here. And then up here, you can either note in an editable rubric or maybe just jot in for yourself that 4 for your organization or your team is going to mean advanced, 3 is proficient, 2 is basic, 1 is minimal. And again, things that you can add up and you can do the math and you can see quantitatively what is happening so that you can understand what's efficient, what's effective, and what's not. And we can make changes. And our changes are informed by data. Very, very important in this day and age. We've got a lot of work to do, church. We need to make sure that we are doing the work in a way that is God glorifying and Christ pleasing. As a training and development person, for a very, very long time, I prayed and asked, Lord, why do we not see the greater things that you said we would do? Lord, you said it. We would do greater things than even Jesus did. He said it himself. And why are we not always seeing that? And that's always my prayer. But one of the answers that I got, because it falls in line with the purpose for which I was created, is that we have to work differently. We have to do the work. There is a business side to the Great Commission. There are more than spiritual matters to attend to, and we have to start doing those. Wise as serpents, innocent as doves. So with a servant leader's heart, we need to be practically wise and think rationally and intelligently and strategically. That's positive. So that brings us to the end. We've just got a few minutes. We've talked about the servant leader's heart and guiding principle, position. We've talked about perspective, and I've given you some tools. That is all that I have for you today. But I would like to ask, and I know that Reverend Young has some closing things that he needs to share with you. I would like to ask, and I think he's dropping it in chat, if you would, and I'll make you a trade, if you would just give me a little bit of feedback about training today so that I can continue to refine it for the body of Christ, so that I can help us to be as efficient and effective in all that we do, efficient and effective as possible. I'd love for you to pop over and just take this survey for me. And what I will do for you is then give you a link to a leadership resource packet that you can take away and you can review in your own time, and you can figure out what you want to start to do to change your area of oversight for the more effective, for the better, for the more improved. And you'll see in that survey as well, there's an opportunity for you to touch base with me directly. If you have a particular workplace issue or problem, something you'd like to talk about a little bit more, if you'd like some insight or some understanding to a thing, if you want to share with me what it looked like for you to try appreciative inquiry, or if you have a question about that, if you have a question about what it might look like for you to apply the 6 boxes to your particular role or environment, I'd love to talk to you. I'll be holding those talks in about 2 weeks, and I'll contact you if you'd like me to, but I will still share those resources with you because I want us all to get a handle and a grip on this, so that we can be better concerning our purpose and all that the Lord has entrusted to us. So thank you very much for that. I think that Reverend Young has put that link in chat. I have it here as well. I'm going to stop sharing, and as you are taking the survey and maybe coming back and forth into the room, if there are any questions, any concerns, any thoughts. Do I have handouts? It's a very good presentation. The handout is in the leadership resource packet, and Reverend Young just put the leadership resource packet link in chat. You can click that and go straight to Google, and it'll open up for you, and then you can save it on your Google Drive.
Together.
I hear someone speaking, but you're broken up. Can you help me with that? Reverend Young, did you hear?
Yeah, I wasn't able to gather it either.
Okay. If you could repeat that or chat that if you had a question. All right. Again, thank you so much today. I encourage you. I always like to share during training. I love to give people more than words. I love for you to have things that you can walk away with and try to implement. But I want to just remind you, you don't have to do all this all at once in any training, but especially with mine. I like to say whatever resonates with you, whatever just really kind of like stood out to you, whatever connected that you connected with, start there and use it in a way that serves your role and the things that you have been given oversight over, the things that the Lord has given you to steward the things and the people. Modify it as you need to. You can touch base with me and ask me what I think or if I have any ideas. I love that. But just start somewhere. And for those of you who are going to walk away and try something, again, I encourage you. I'd love to talk to you in a couple of weeks to understand your experience, and you'd be helping me with very, very useful and valuable data as well. All right, that is all I have. I will turn it back over to Reverend Young if there are no more questions or concerns. And I hope to connect with some, if not, I'd love all of you in a couple of weeks. But thank you very, very much. Be blessed.